Mani, hi.
Hi, Rena. How are you doing?
Great. Always a pleasure, Mani, because I think your last interview with us was exceptional. You provided so much value, and I had candidates coming to me talking about the value of that you put out there. So just a little bit about Mani. Mani is the market director at SHL. He's got a strong background in sales leadership. I love working with someone like Mani because every time we have a conversation, we're constantly learning. He's a client we value, and Mani can tell you a little bit about his background. But what I think is very beneficial from our interviews is the research and the value of research, especially when it comes to sales and recruitment. So, and I think being in the talent management space, they do it exceptionally well. So, Mani, just a little bit about your background and what keeps you in the sales game as a sales leader, because you've got to wake up every day self-motivated and loving what you do, and you do that exceptionally well. I mean, talking to employees that we've placed with you, they just admire you, and they kind of talk so highly about yourself, and you know more about the individual when you're not in the room. So well done to you.
Thanks, Rena. Appreciate that feedback. Yeah, a little bit of myself. So, market director at SHL. For those of your audience who don't know SHL, we are a talent solutions company based on SaaS. Very strong DNA around science and research that underpin our solutions to support basically talent acquisition, talent management leaders make objective data-driven decisions around the people in both domains. Prior to this, I've always had having a market-facing role, so various sales and business leadership roles, notably at Gartner for a while, a long stint at Gartner, and prior to that at Hewlett-Packard in the services business, in the solutions and services business. In terms of what drives me and what gets me out of bed and why I've been doing this for a few decades now, I'm a problem solver and analytic by nature. So it's the clients, understanding them, relating to them, and solving their problems or helping them achieve key objectives and initiatives gives me a thrill and a satisfaction. And it's the same thing with my team and the people that I work for. Just getting to know them and understanding them and working with them, I learn a lot as much as I'm able to hopefully add value to both my team as well as the clients, and that keeps me motivated.
I like that. The whole thing about being a problem solver and why. And that's something new, actually, because not many sales leaders say that. They're more about, I'm all about the numbers, I'm all about the competition, or so that's a really good take on it. So I think
numbers, competition, and goal-driven are now hygiene factors, and if they demotivate you, then you probably wouldn't be in the profession that we are in the sales profession.
Yeah, no, I agree. Or money, a lot of sales leaders are in there that if their team's making their numbers, then they're able to also exceed their earning potential. So money is a big driver for sales professionals and sales leaders. So I like your take on being a problem solver. Money, I mean, the one thing I think SHL does quite differently is looking beyond the resume. And we could put candidates from all walks of life over to you, and you're very open to looking at that, because it's potentially a very unpopular opinion that you as a business would look at not just a resume and college degrees and the qualifications. You look way beyond that. So how do you particularly do it differently? And I mean, I think you found a lot of success in doing that. So through all the research as well, why do you think it's important for not just yourself, but businesses out there to look beyond that resume, especially for sales hiring?
So I'll probably take a step back and say why we do that
Yes.
in the first instance, and then the how follows after that. Um, there are several reasons. It's the shifting landscape. So if I had to compartmentalize it, you got in terms of a job requirement, in
Mm-hmm.
terms of what success looks like for an individual, you'll have technical skills, and then you have what we call semi-durable skills, and then durable skills or competencies.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Technical skills have a very short shelf life,
Mm-hmm.
right? In terms of what you know, what you can do. So I know, for example, this particular ERP solution and I can deliver it. Sometimes it's required depending on the role. And if it is a technical and delivery role, you need that at this point in time. But your Rolodex has a short shelf life in terms of whom you know, and I can call upon these people to sell. It's not about the people that you know now, but how you are able to get those connections and maintain those relationships that are important. So that's the short shelf life. The semi-durable skills have a longer shelf life. These are things like knowledge about methodology, being a practitioner, or methodologies, frameworks that you can apply in a situation to help break it down into components and to be able to solve. But where we focus a lot of our selection and also in the talent management in terms of development of people is around what we call durable skills or competencies.
Mm-hmm.
They have a much longer shelf life in terms of work style preferences, your motivators, your work style preferences, and your cognitive ability, for example, as a collective. And so durable skills, for example, would be resilience, adaptability. Durable skills would be, for example, learning and researching. You have the ability to learn and research. Why this is important is it's not only a good predictor of readiness and future potential, but it also can be harnessed when the future is, as it is currently, quite uncertain and ambiguous in terms of how things would change. So let me unpack that a little bit for you in terms of how that plays itself out in the sales profession, right? Uh, Traditionally, we've always had a sales model based, and you actually touched upon this in terms of what we look at, achievement orientation, competitive nature. These are still competencies and traits, if you like,
Mm-hmm.
call it whatever, traits, attitudes, but you have the achievement orientation, driven by money, driven by power, driven by the recognition. Those are the
Mm-hmm.
motivating factors that traditionally you would look at. And in terms of competencies, you look at things like relating and networking, presenting and communicating, influencing and persuading. These are the durable skills that you look at for a sales professional, right? The ability to make connections. They're still there to some extent, but the whole landscape of our profession has shifted. And there are
Mm.
three big, if you like, buckets under which there has been some shift happening. The first one is the buying behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I'm, by the way, just to set the context, I'm talking mostly in terms of B2B sales, because B2C has its own peculiarities here. So from a B2B sales, these days, you find that buyers and the buying journey, a lot of the research and the buying shortlisting is done way before they even speak to a salesperson.
Mm.
It's gone are the days where the first call is to a salesperson or a few salespeople. They've done their research, and online and information being available it's there, right? Uh, the other key driver here is people now, our buyers are more data driven in their approach, ROI,
Mm.
data driven. How will this make a difference? How will this shift the dial? It's not the what anymore. It is how will this shift and achieve my objective or solve my problem.
100%.
So it's the data driven. And I'll come later in a bit to how that shifts what a good salesperson looks like from those durable skills and competencies point of view. The second shift in the landscape is around the understanding of technology, if you like. The way people interact with sales is no longer about pushing content, but
Yeah.
it's about pulling. It's no longer about understanding what you have to do and your value proposition or your USP, unique selling value proposition. It's more around educating. I get
Mm,
some every sales interaction. If the buyer gets some value out of it because I learned something more, I'm that much the better off. That brings value into the relationship, and that's the one that lasts. It's no longer anything about just pushing stuff,
pushing,
right?
yes.
Because they know what they want to get when they come to a meeting. They've already done their research. The buying journey has already been done. So they're looking more for a partnership approach. We see this with a lot of clients. There is still some transactional buying behavior that happens where there is
But
not
that's
much
old
of
school.
collaboration, but that's old school. Increasingly, B2B solution sales especially is a collaborative approach that is coming in. So that shifts, that's the buyer expectations, if you like, which shifts how a salesperson will now need to behave, act, and the habits that they will need to do. The last thing is in terms of what we have gone through. COVID and technology and the remote workplace have changed a lot of things. And we know that the future is quite uncertain in terms of the market, and we're going through that right now. And so we had the core set of competencies or the durable skills that we talked about that define a good salesperson: achievement, orientation, influencing,
Mm,
persuading. But adding to that are a couple of more things that now we see as necessity. One is adaptability and the other is resilience. And if you had to add to that the whole aspect of learning and researching, harnessing technology, it's become important. So I'll pause here a lot. I've said a lot here, but I've talked about it in terms of the why, and the why is not because of anything we as professional sales professionals are doing. It is what's happening around us
right.
due to technology, due to the remote work, and what COVID has actually accelerated. This whole remote and hybrid work style was happening in the 21st century, but it's just accelerated by COVID. And the buying behavior has changed because of the availability of online and data and information. And that's creating a different persona of the sales professional for the future.
100%. 100%. So what I think you've given some really good insight around what the persona of a sales professional looks like. I really liked your take on customers these days having already done their research, already, there's a lot of customer success managers. There's the whole, everyone's talking about the customer journey and buying expectations and so forth. So as a customer, especially when it comes to a solution, they've already done their research. It's 100% right. So I mean, I think it's all about educating them further and adding as much value as you can through that process. So the whole partnership approach is definitely the way to go. And I think what I know our audience would love to hear about is, you're coming from a talent management solution. You're constantly involved with the research of of trends. I mean, I know you guys do that particularly well, and as a business, you're always evolving and doing things or trying to do things differently. You're also a leader in the space, right? So based on all your research at the moment, what do you think are the trends, are the evolving trends for the future when it comes to business to business solution selling?
From a durable skills point of view, what we're increasingly starting to look at is the remote working potential, not everyone. So if you look at your traditional sales mold, it's really, you got to break the mold, first of all.
Yeah.
Right? The traditional sales mold based on which you said what good looks like and selected. The whole idea that the salesperson has to be in situ in the location where their clientele are and territory is, that just limits the talent pool that you can actually address to hire. And you might not get what you're looking for, even if you had the money to pay for it, if it was a scarce talent pool. So the whole idea of remote work potential, but then making sure that the individuals you're hiring have the ability to be productive and engaged and energized working remotely for a substantive period of time. The other part of it I talked about is in terms of the data-driven buying approach that clients have, right? So you need to have now increasingly sales professionals who are commercially analytic and are able to adopt technology in their engagement and interaction. So there used to be this, I always say this, I don't know whether it's still the FedEx motto, but you can't fax a handshake. And that dates me. It's the times of the fax machine. I don't think that is a fax. They all belong in the museum. But the fact of the matter is you need people who can engage and develop a connection through technology, social technology, video, other mechanisms, because it is not clients themselves, the buyers themselves don't always want to meet in person. Right? To be able to look them in the eye and talk. That is a benefit in doing that if you can, but it's moved away to that hybrid style. So we are looking at people who can have the commercial analytics and the ability to adopt and harness technology in the sales engagement. The third one is really around the push and the pull, right? People who can actually break down and simplify and convey messages and material simply. So part of the fact that there is this buying journey that is happening before they speak to a salesperson, a bulk of it is that buyers still need to speak to a salesperson at some point in time because there's the reverse happening. It's information overload.
100%.
Right? They can't decide entirely offline. And so now when they speak to a salesperson, what they're not looking for is even more information to digest and break down, but someone who can simplify and convey that complex information in an easy to understand way that helps them make decisions. So that's part of that communication, how the shift has happened. The other one I talked about is not just knowing about your product and everything else, you have to create that value for that interaction with the people that you talk to. Right? Personalization and value creation. The collaboration part we talked about. The last one, the resilience, adaptability, and the commercial creativity is probably what I would say the transferable skills or competencies that sales professional in the old mold can bring to transform themselves to be ready, productive, and successful in the future of sales, if you like. For lack of a better word, I'll just coin that phrase. So that's really where you're looking. Now, you notice that when I talk about this in our selection criteria, degrees and graduates and the whole idea of location and breaking the mold on that, they have all taken a secondary industry relevance, if you like, industry relevant experience. I need to get someone who has worked in the talent management, talent acquisition industry. Now, don't mistake me. I'm not saying that you put zero weightage on that. It's just a question of where you rank it. So where you would say some things are nice to have or preferred, you would put them. If you have all of these competencies and skills in a person who comes with sales experience, and not from the industry versus someone who comes with that industry experience. I've been there, sold that 3 different ERP projects in the last, ERP solutions in the last 20, or talent management solutions in the last 20 years, and they don't have some of these key elements. I would put forward the proposition here that their success would be short-lived and they're not future-proofed.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful about the technology knowledge, the domain knowledge, and the technical skills that they come with. If they come with all of that, and this, I mean, you got the ideal person, just hire them.
Yeah, 100%.
But it's what you prioritize.
100%. I think you're living proof of that. You know, you didn't really. You're now the market director at SHL, but your prior experience was very, very different. You know, you had
in IT services, basically.
IT services. So you've used that experience, that analytical solution selling background, to make a real success in the whole talent management space, and you've done that successfully. So that's you're a living proof of how transition from industry sectors do work, and they can actually work in a business's favor, right? So, I mean, I think, and then using tools like the ones SHL have, where you can particularly assess how curious the individual is, how adaptive the individual is, what's their, how do they think on their feet, and I mean, and your assessments aren't easy either. So I don't think it has to be easy to assess someone's ability, but you do, the ones that do go through with it and excel, we've particularly seen a lot of longevity in those individuals.
And Rena, it's not just one data point. The assessments to drive soft skills, or what we call soft skills competencies, they are one data point. We do have structured interview as a second data point. It's not about easy, and you're right, in a candidate scarce market, or if it's a candidate scarce profession, you have to balance candidate experience versus the insight and the data that you get. So increasingly, we're looking to balance that and shorten the time taken to hire, the time taken to do an assessment. The assessments themselves are being improved so that it's not as onerous as they used to be, say, 2-3 years back. The steps are not as many because you can collapse many steps in the selection process into one. From application to hire, we can do it in 2 weeks, and that's really largely dependent on time and availability of the individual to do the assessment, and time and availability of both parties to come together for that interview and the observed behavior, if you like. So it's a fairly quick process. In our business, which is a people's business, research R&D, our entire thing is a people really business. It's a SaaS solution, software as a service solution. But really, if you ask what is the core of our business, are the people. And therefore, you can't afford to make wrong decisions or hasty decisions, if you like, because the cost to the business and to the client and the brand is even more. 100%. So you have to be careful, what to do.
100%. Look, Rani, I think you've given us some really good insight around what the future. I mean, let's be honest. It's all about giving our audience as much value as we can. And I think you've gone in and given us some really good insight around what sales looks like from a transformation perspective. I mean, the future of what solution sales professionals looks like. I mean, I think there's some really good insight and data that you've provided through your research, and I'm grateful for that, because I think I've learned a thing or two around data points, around looking beyond. I mean, just even the whole buying journey and customers coming through that have already got a need. How do you then convert them? And I think it's so true that it's all about educating your customers and having the skill to be able to do that, but the knowledge, and that comes with a skilled sales professional that actually has some great data, some great analytics that they can share, but they can sell that in a value in a very creative way. So they're showcasing value and they're getting buy-in. So and that's, I mean, and I think that's that comes with time, and that comes with time when you're being in that solution selling space for a while, that you know how to do that creatively, right? So I think you guys look for that, and you know how to do that. But I think there's a lot of people that over time have to learn that skill. Yeah.
The other thing that happens is the diversity of your workforce is almost a consequential outcome that you achieve those diversity and equity and inclusion outcomes, because you're looking at the selection process not based on experience and resume and degrees, which are very prone to hiring manager unconscious bias, if you like. I mean, without even thinking, I'm not suggesting that there are people who are deliberately looking to be, to have bias, but that is that unconscious bias. But when you look away from these characteristics of which industry you come from, what experience you come, which degrees, which universities, which locations, it automatically drives a certain level of diversity. It opens up your talent pool to which you can go to for people who are returning from work, maybe from parental leave or otherwise who've taken a career break for a variety of reasons. It taps into regional pools where there's an extraordinary amount of talent. And it's funny that we're talking about your own uh, drivers in this respect. You've got extraordinary talent in regional locations,
Oh,
and
100%.
remote working is about connectivity. As long as you've got good, stable bandwidth, and you are physically connected to a port where you can travel if and when required to wherever, there's no reason why you can't be a productive professional in B2B
100%.
sales or many other professions. Actually, what I talked about can be extended across not just the sales profession, but across the board. And that's just amazing,
No, I agree.
the kind of
I
people we
think
get.
COVID's taught us a lot, but just one more question here for you, Mani. I mean, there's a lot of businesses these days that are um, making the transition back to work, and it's becoming. And these are large businesses. We're talking Foxtel, Woolies, and the likes of them, and they're making it mandatory for employees to go into the office 3 days a week. What are your thoughts on that? Because obviously, if you've hired someone to work on your Sydney portfolio, but they're based in say Orange.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just giving you an example because we just spoke about regional talent and all of that. They physically can't do that.
Yeah.
Right.
So I can't speak for the other companies, and far be it for me to judge as to the reasons and the rationale why they are doing that. I can only encourage them, and I assume that they have done so, is that if they are moving to that kind of a mandated hybrid model, if I can call it that they have shared the why of it and the benefits to clients, organization, and the self and the individual. SHL ourselves have moved back into a hybrid model. It's not necessarily mandated, but trying to move into a hybrid of face-to-face, in-person interactions within the office to working remotely. We've always had a hybrid workforce. So in this country and in most of the other geographies we operate globally, we've had individuals who've been remote workers, that is not office-based workers, office-based staff. My team itself, we're talking about people who are working in locations and states where we don't have an office. So what I refer to as going back to a hybrid model are those who are traditionally office-based staff who then went 100% remote during COVID, and now coming back to a hybrid kind of a model. And those who are always remote, so for example, those who are within metropolitan Sydney, we got a Sydney office. We are encouraging to have a hybrid and to work that hybrid within flexibility. So flexibility is still there as to when and why you come into the office, but to plan your commitments, personal and work commitments, in a manner that you're able to come into the office for good reasons and to be productive 2 to 3 times in a week, for example. So that is that benefit of in-person interactions, workshops, we're having a whiteboard, having a group of 3 or 4 people co-located and brainstorming, having team meetings, if you like, where you want to look at a campaign and working through that. It is actually so much more productive to be there, to have people get their creative energies and juices flowing. Clients, some of them now have preferred to have face-to-face, or have said, I'm open to having face-to-face meetings and in-person meetings, and we would love that. Like I said, you are hiring the professional for the future and the current hybrid workforce, where there are clients and a large proportion of them who are remaining remote and would like to engage remotely. So someone who can engage, make that connection, and influence and persuade remotely. But there are those who are still would like to meet up in person. And so that's gold to be able to come in. So I guess that's a long-winded way of saying it's okay to come back to a hybrid model being mandated. jury's out on that. Having flexibility as to when and why you come back into the office environment, I think is the key. And explaining and communicating that to people is very important. It's because you want to retain talent and not have them go out the door for these reasons.
100%. No, I agree. I think, Amani, you've given our audience here a very different take on things. I think a lot of this, sales leaders and sales professionals know, but it's the language we use, and it's actually a proven model in your business. And I really do appreciate you taking the time to share that. There's a lot of research behind that. Your business and the business you work for, specifically SHO, have done this particularly well, where you look way beyond the resume. You also look for transferable skills. You do that through research, and you've also shared a lot around how the future of sales is evolving, and that's through remote working. And how do you understand how to work with teams remotely? But Mani, thank you very much for today. I really appreciate you taking the time. Is there anything else you'd like to share?
Now, all good. I could probably talk all day on this topic, but thank you for the opportunity to have this chat and share my thoughts and point of view based on the research from SHL, my own personal experience, and what I'm seeing out there in the market.
Awesome. I think it's been enlightening, and it's always a pleasure hosting you, Mani. Thank you for your time.
Thanks very much. Cheers.